This question for you, of course, is what?
But you're not the only one. The reaction here is pretty much what as well. In fact, I wanted to start with that, saying this is most unusual for India too. And solely because, so it's very unusual for India because the matter has reached the court. However, but it is very, very common for there to be parental pressure to have children. In fact, if you take a step back, the first pressure is to get married. It's called getting settled in India. It's a fairly common term to say get settled, and immediately after that have children. Interestingly, David, your package, I was just listening to it on air, and from a Western perspective, you use the word just 6 years. They've been married just 6 years. In India, it's not just 6 years. Culturally, I think the expectation is within 2 years you produce a child. So in India, I think culturally the context changes. 6 years is a fairly long time, and for most families across levels of society, and this is the interesting bit, it's not relegated to a particular state, a particular region. It's pretty much consistently across India, most places in India, across all levels of society, the expectation is you get married early and then you produce children.
When you say get married early, is the average age for marriage been changing in India in recent years as education level rises, etc., or has it stayed pretty constant? And also a question about the case itself. What sort of court in India would be willing to hear such a case? Is it common that cases like that have to do with familial issues that are, don't involve money or anything? No one did anything bad. It's just a matter of values, right?
Right. I'll take the second question first. That's an easier answer. The point is there are bizarre cases heard all over the world. It's not limited to India. This is bizarre by Indian standards as well. So I'm not going to comment on why the court allowed a hearing, and they're going to have the hearing tomorrow, I believe, allowed it to come through. There is a long list. This is not the only bizarre case. I'm not going to go into examples of highly bizarre cases that the courts seem to have time for. But coming back to your other question, the first one, India is a land that is really diverse, and it's difficult to I wish there was a snapshot answer. I could say, no, this is the age people get married. The good news is that in most urban centers and also where there is education, the marriageable age is going up. However, if I have to put an extreme contrast on the other side, the fact is there are child marriages that happen too. So in a country like India, it's very difficult to give a one-line answer saying this is the way it is and this is the trend and the direction.
Of course, such a vast country, geographically and culturally and of course, population-wise. I do want to get back to the case and ask you, have we heard anything from the husband and the wife?
No, I think it's been mostly silent so far, which is probably a smarter thing to do and not have it blow out of. This seems to be a family issue that's kind of blown out of proportion. At one phrase he used, his father was, I need love and affection. And when I heard that, the first thing that comes to mind is this is probably taken a strange kind of extreme direction, but it probably stems from just a longing to be loved and have family and share warmth. And, on a positive side, that's probably all he's looking for. No, we've heard nothing from the son yet, not that I know of.
And of course, we still don't know. Perhaps there are reasons behind it because we haven't heard from the couple. We don't know if they're even able to have children, although we can assume that perhaps they wouldn't have gone to court if the possibility wasn't there.
I don't think the issue really is whether they're able to have children, or it is a deeper question of choice and how in a cultural context this person is educated. He's clearly has a job. He's 35 years old. So at some stage, I think it addresses larger questions of being able to be independent enough to take that decision. In India, as you're probably aware, the cultural and family roots are quite strongly intertwined. So I'm not going into what is right and what is wrong, but I do understand where the father is coming from. Again, I'm not commenting on whether he's right or wrong, but I understand the baggage of this whole cultural baggage that he might carry and this expectation of, having a grandchild. However, as I think it's true for one generation to another. The fact is, his son would think differently. And like you mentioned, 6 years is not long, but try saying that to anyone here.
Well, I have a disclaimer. My parents were married for 8 years before they had children, and I think they had to use every excuse possible in order to get people off their backs. And I am 40, and I don't have children yet. So I am the person to have this conversation with you.
In which case, I should put mine in too. I took 9 years before I had my first child. So
I do want to ask you.
I was lucky enough to have that choice.
Yeah, I want to ask.
Most people in India actually. Sorry.
I want to ask on the broader sense with regards to younger generations making choices that perhaps different to what parents would have made decades ago, and ask about intermarriages. There is so many different castes and so many different religions in India as well. You have Muslims, you have Hindus, you have Buddhists, you have Christians, etc. How common is it and how accepted is it among families? And of course, again, it's a very big country, but let's talk about urban centers, at least places like Mumbai or Delhi. How common is it for families to accept marriages that are interfaith?
So again, in an urban center, a big city offers you anonymity. It's so much easier. But to change mindsets and prejudices which have existed for centuries, it doesn't happen overnight. It will take time. So to answer in a snapshot, no, it's very much prevalent. In fact, to tell you a small story, I was in Bombay a few days ago. I'm in Delhi now. And these are cities where you forget these prejudices exist, right? You have friends who married interfaith, intercaste, and you don't even think. Just 2 days ago, I was in Haridwar, which is where the court is hearing this petition, just 2 days ago. And it's a beautiful, smaller town with the beautiful Ganga River flowing, and it's a spiritual place. I went with that expectation, but in 2 days, you also realize that the mindsets of the people that you meet are very different from that of a big city. And the reason I say this is because it's still so fresh for me that when we live in a big city, we tend to forget what India is. Being an Indian myself, having lived here all my life, I still forget how is it in smaller towns. And just on Friday in Haridwar, I was reminded not once, but several times how different it is. Yeah. So to answer your question, yes, it is very tough for interfaith or intercaste marriages, couples, especially in the smaller towns. Very often, the pressure is not just from your family, but from your community. Yeah. You're ostracized. You face a lot, and typically, for most of these couples, the only option is to run to a bigger city, which offers anonymity.
Thank God we have bigger cities. Ekta Kumar, thank you very much for being with us. It's a pleasure speaking to you today from New Delhi. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
We're going to take a short break now. We have